Brought to you by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey.
Welcome to New Jersey Capitol Report. I'm Rafael P. Roman.
And I'm Steve Adubato. We are pleased to welcome back to Capitol Report Ed Richardson, Executive Director, New Jersey Education Association. Good to see you, Ed.
Hello, folks. Ed, welcome.
I want to make sure everybody knows that the New Jersey Education Association represents how many members?
200,000.
And who are they?
They are predominantly active public school teachers, but also we represent about 50,000 education support professionals in our public schools, as well as about 25,000 retired school employees.
And we've had several conversations about the pension crisis, the public employee pension crisis. By the way, if you hear sirens here, we are in Newark, New Jersey. Not that there's any correlation, but we are here in Newark at the North Ward Center. I want to ask you this, Ed. The pension crisis right now, as we enter the fall of 2016, where are we today, and why are we so far away from resolving the public employee pension crisis?
We're unfortunately nowhere different than we were a year or two ago. The state has unfortunately failed to make its contributions into the public employee pension systems for the last 20 years, and in some of those years paid nothing into the systems. The systems, particularly the ones representing public school employees and state employees, are vastly underfunded. The teacher pension and annuity fund is funded at a level of about 54% right now. And that's pretty scary. That means that for every dollar of promised benefit, there's only 54 cents. Now, this is a long-term problem. It's not something that has to be solved overnight, but there needs to be a solution, and the longer that we wait, the more expensive it becomes for the state of New Jersey. Make no mistake, the state of New Jersey is absolutely obligated to pay the benefits. The courts have reaffirmed that. We don't ever, however, want to get to a point where the state is paying those benefits out of general operating revenue. They need to shore up the funding of the pension plans themselves.
Well, the way that the NJEA was hoping to begin to solve the problem was to put a referendum on the ballot in November that would compel the state to make the payments. Senate President...
Excuse me, if the voters approved.
If the voters approved it, of course. Senate President Sweeney was a supporter of that. He said because of the transportation trust fund problems, I mean, the state couldn't afford it, people would vote against it, so he didn't put it up for the ballot. You began a feud with the Senate President. What's that all about, and what's next?
And it's interesting you said that NJEA was in support of this. The Senate President was in support of it. All of the Senate Democrats were in support of it.
What did he actually say, Ed? I'm sorry for interrupting, Ed. What did the Senate President actually say, and what commitment do you believe he made to doing this?
It was emphatic. He came to our legislative conference in February. He was on a panel with the Assembly Speaker, Vincent Prieto. Our president moderated that discussion. Obviously, this issue came up. The Senate president outright said, there was a video camera, outright looked at the camera and said, look, there's a camera, I'm going to say right on camera here, we're going to get this done, we're going to do this, it will be on the ballot. And then implored our members, 600 of them in the audience, and said, we'll do our part, you need to do yours, and work hard to make sure that this gets passed in November.
But the Senate President said, look, things have changed. As I said, the Transportation Trust Fund issue came up. It hasn't been resolved. That's going to cost millions. He says people would vote against it. He was actually afraid that this referendum will be turned down. That's his argument.
That is actually the problem. For 20 years, there's been an excuse as to why we couldn't afford to fund our pension obligations. The obligations exist. They are not going away. And so this should have been put on the ballot. We are confident that we had a very good chance of passing it with or without the TTF issue. Let's be honest.
The Transportation Trust Fund issue.
We have done all of the legwork working with the 9 other public employee unions. We were very confident that we were going to have
that the public would support the idea of the state of New Jersey paying their committed share of the public employee pension debt, if you will. You're convinced of that?
Even if it meant raising taxes for them.
Well, no one has said that we needed to raise taxes. Senate President
the opponents would have said it for sure.
Said that we didn't have to. And even when the Senate was looking at whatever deal they needed to make in order to buy votes for a transportation trust fund agreement, let's face it, that's what they were doing.
Why do you say that?
The TTF is funded by the gasoline tax. The TTF is out of money. The legislature was looking at passing a gasoline tax to
couldn't get the votes.
To health.
As we speak, couldn't get the votes.
That's a very pure proposition. You need money to fix our roads and bridges. You're going to get that from motor fuels taxes. And, that on its face made a lot of sense. What didn't make sense was digging a deep hole in the budget in order to buy Republican votes, which is really what they were trying to do.
But I'd connect that back again to the pension crisis. Do you believe that the Senate president genuinely believed that putting up that ballot question would have caused it to go down to defeat and would have hurt your cause?
I don't know.
That's what he said publicly.
I understand that. I don't know what all the real motivations are here, and I suspect that
and
you
won't take him on his word.
His word was to us.
But you mean to do it.
And I'm sorry. I go back to what I was saying earlier. This is part of the problem. This is why you do the pension amendment first. It's an obligation that the state is not going to get
before the Transportation Trust Fund.
Before anything. I've said often that we want to be on an equal footing with the state's bondholders. They get paid first every year out of the state budget. No one is ever suggesting we should default on our bondholder commitments. Why should we default on our pension commitments? And that's what the state has been doing and needs to stop doing, or we're going to end up in a really difficult situation here.
Just to end up with Sweeney, Senate President Sweeney, do you consider him somebody who's been relatively supportive to the NJEA over the years, or not?
Over the years, it's really, frankly, been up and down. Let's go back to 2011, Chapter 78, a law that was passed to make sweeping changes in both pension and public employee health benefits. The Senate president essentially made a deal with the governor and, at that time, the Assembly Speaker, and that deal included a huge ramp up in pension funding commitments for employees. Many people don't understand. Public employees have been paying into the pension systems every paycheck for decades from the beginning. They are now, our members, paying 7.5% of salary. I don't know that anybody out there in the private sector is required to pay 7.5% of their salary toward their retirement benefit, but that's number
So
one.
you're not pleased with any of that?
I'm not saying we're not pleased with it. I'm saying that part of the law was basically ramping that contribution up, and then at the same time requiring public employees to pay up to 35% of the cost of their health insurance.
So you didn't like what he did there, and you don't like what he did with the promise. My question is it possible for an elected official to disagree with some of the points of the NJEA without meriting the mighty wrath of the organization?
Sure. What I would say, however, is that we've been down this road for a very long time. Over the past year, we've worked hand in hand with the Senate President, his colleagues, his staff, the Assembly Speaker, his colleagues, his staff. Everyone was on board with this and moving it forward. And so to have it pulled out from under us at the 11th hour, it's like, Charlie Brown trying to kick the football and the football's being pulled away. It's just not fair. Our members certainly don't understand it. And, think of all the work that has gone into this over that period of time. I will tell you, Assembly Speaker Prieto was originally the skeptic. He was not completely on board with this concept at the beginning, and he wanted to see a lot of data, a lot of information, and we provided some of that. Our other union colleagues provided some of it, but this wasn't a matter of that we were going to hold their feet to the fire from the beginning. Yes, this is a huge priority for the organization. It should be. Our members' retirement security is at stake here. The retirement security of 800,000 public employees and their families is at stake here. And this was the path that was chosen not just by us, but by the legislative leadership. So to get all the way down that path, and as I said, have the football pulled out is just disheartening and extremely disappointing.
Ed, let me tell you, I'm curious about this. How does this get resolved? Because if, in fact, there is no payment that the state is supposed to make, what happens to the pension situation and the debt and the crisis?
We're essentially...
And how are retirees paid and how are future retirees going to be paid? What happens?
We're essentially back where we were, which is fighting in every state budget for the required payment. Last year, the governor put in an amount of money that was equal to the fourth tenth in this current state budget. A fifth tenth was budgeted. And, you know, to the point that I made earlier about this big plan to have the constitutional amendment in place, if the amendment were to pass, we would have been on a pathway to fund the 6th through 10th tenths.
Ed, real quick, before you stick on any further, Christie has argued, and you'll go back to that point, Christie has argued many times that he has done more to put state dollars into the pension fund than many, many other governors put together. Accurate?
Accurate to a point. Here's the problem with that.
Real quick.
The governor signed Chapter 78. The law was supposed
2011 law.
2011 law was supposed to ramp up the funding over a 7-year period that we're now trying to get in this amendment. He got 2 years in and said, I quit. I can't do it anymore. And in the meantime...
Because he said the money wasn't there.
Well, he said the money wasn't there. Unfortunately, what happens is pension funding gets budgeted at the beginning of the fiscal year and not paid till the end. So you burn through all the other revenue and there's not enough money left. Big shock. The other element of the constitutional amendment that we would still like to get legislatively is required quarterly payments, so we don't keep doing that. But again, last year, the governor got on a path to funding the tenths, which would have put us on the glide path to the payment schedule in the amendment. So everything was aligning the way that we thought it would and that we thought it should for the state to gradually ramp up to full funding over the next 5 years and then sustain that.
Ed, we'll stay on this issue, and we hopefully it will be resolved for all of those retirees. Ed Richardson, Executive Director, New Jersey Education Association.
I work for Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I'm a catastrophic case manager. I'm a nurse. I feel a sense of responsibility to each and every member that I speak with on the phone. I know where they live, I know their towns, I know the hospitals they go to. A lot of times I know their physicians, and I love helping people at very difficult times of their lives. The job I have now is the perfect job for me. I think I was born a nurse.
Also brought to you by New Jersey Council of County Colleges, Seton Hall University, and by New Jersey Sharing Network,